All right, let me go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is State Building Code Council Executive Committee for April 4th, 2025. I think we can try to take roll, please.
Todd Baber there.
Here.
Jay Arnold.
Here.
Damon Doyle. Roger Haringa.
Here.
Tom Handy.
Here.
So we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And we can ask if anyone from the public would like to be recognized. Patrick.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Thank you. Dave, please.
Dave Cocott, Washington State Association of Fire Marshals and Spokane Fire Department.
Welcome. Okay, seeing no other hands, we'll go to agenda item 2. Could we hear a motion to review and approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Tom. Then Jay. Any discussion on this? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, go ahead, Roger. Yep.
My only discussion is I have a hard stop at about 11:20. I do really want to be here for item 5. I think we will be fine, but if we could just keep an eye on that. But other than I'm fine approving it as is.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll be quick today, but thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay. Now, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Item 3 is review and approve the minutes from February 18th and March 7th. Maybe we can review them first.
All right, so up here we have the minutes from February 18th. And then we have coming up to March 7th. That's the end of the
Okay,
scroll.
thank you. Can we hear a motion to approve both, please?
So moved. Second.
Jay and then Tom, thank you. Any edits or discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes for February 15th, 17th and March 7th are approved. Okay, I got a text from Damon. He'll be on in a couple minutes, he said. Back to the agenda, please.
Get that back up here. There we go.
Okay, so tag appointments. So again, we can approve tag members applications either in this committee or as the full council. So it's been our practice to try to review in this meeting when we can. So go ahead, Dustin, I believe, or do you want to lead?
scrolling wildly on the screen, sorry.
It's okay.
So the first one, we don't, on this spreadsheet, we don't have, or this is all pretty much group 2, and we have some slots in for, the group 1 tags as well. But the primary, groups on this one are group 2, and we don't have anything for the IRC or the, residential energy code. So we're starting off with the single exit multiplex housing tag seats. I have on here Jesse Bank, and then also, at 5 o'clock last night, we had another application come in for David Lynham. So this one wasn't posted online. This one comes with a letter of recommendation from the Washington State Fire Marshal. And so I'd like to try to dispense him into this one as well. And Jesse Bank, we had posted on there, and he was also recommended for the slot for primary low income housing on by also Roger as well. And I'll pause there. Dave has his hand up.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I thought the last week we had a appointment, somebody submitted for the fire official cities alternate was Rich Geiske from Redmond.
You're saying we'd made the appointment last week, or we?
He submitted, and I did get a copy of that he sent to you. So I thought you guys had that, so I don't see his name on here, but the Fire Marshal Association did also recommend him for that alternate appointment for fire official cities.
Gotcha. Rosanna, can we scrub our emails and make sure we have, it's Dave Giske, you said?
Rich.
Rich, I'm sorry. Rosanna, could we just make sure we get Rich Giske's stuff, and if not, I'll reach out to you, Dave, and we can make contact. I heard you said you had a email showing you sent that. Just make sure.
We could definitely get that to you. But we thought we had it in, but if not, we'll follow up.
Yeah, we'll definitely have that one on the council meeting on April 18th. If we we'll make sure we have it, and we'll get it on there for that meeting.
Thank you.
Dave, I would mention that we have our first meeting next Monday of this tag.
Right.
So have him attend. Certainly anybody can attend a tag meeting and comment. So and then we'll get the paperwork taken care of.
Yeah, I've recommended that he participate whether he was selected today or not. So and same thing with Mr. Lynham as well. So both of them will be sitting in.
Great.
Okay. And I know Mike Wright intended, so, and he confirmed that he emailed last week, so maybe I need to circle back with him.
All right, so we have for the single exit multiplex housing, what we have on screen, and then we have 2 more applications for the WUI code tag. We have again Jesse Bank as an affordable housing developer alternate. I see Katie Sheehan on here. Katie, I don't recall if I got an email back from you on this one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I decided to just come to the meetings.
That is okay. That is okay. We can.
And I'm sorry, my printer just warmed up, so I apologize for the noise. It should be finished there. Yeah, I see that you moved Jesse into the housing developer. I was trying to figure out what if I like him for the alternate, or as a he represents the where is it? I just had it pulled up. The Northeast Public Development Authority in Spokane, which is a quasi-governmental organization that works closely with the city. And so I don't know if he could be moved into a slot like that, or if it would be better to have him as a housing developer. But if we're trying to fill out our slots, I think that he might be able to fit into that that spot as a full representative, or as a primary.
For which slot? The counties and cities and counties?
Cities and counties, but I don't know if people feel I would be open to that, but
Katie, I agree with that, and that was actually what would be my recommendation. In addition to his role as the ED for the Northeast Public Development Authority, he also happens to be the chair of the Plan Commission in Spokane.
Oh, okay. Well, then I think that was that in his resume. I didn't see it. Oh, there it is. Well, Plan Commission. I see it now. Okay, it was. missed that part. So
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds great. So I would move him there, and then I appreciate Angie coming in for DNR. That's a great representation. And then this Michael Wright, I don't know.
He needs to be moved up to he applied for the single exit.
Oh, I see. Okay.
His application status, so we were expecting something in the mail or email earlier this week, but we came in, we didn't catch it. And so we're scrubbing to bring him to the April 18th meeting.
Okay, we can move him from this, so I know he was not intended to be on the WUI.
And Todd, he's a structural engineer?
He is a structural engineer in Seattle, yes.
So just remove him from the WUI tag completely?
Yeah, he was not intended on WUI.
Gotcha.
I mean, we'd take him.
No, we need structural engineering representation on the single exit as well, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roger, he is a long career in especially performance-based design and
Yeah.
so
You know what company he's with?
he's semi-retired now. He was with Degg & Kolb. He used to be my
Okay.
mentor 25 years ago at Swenson Saint-Faget. So yeah, I do know.
I know the name. I'm not sure I know him personally.
Yeah. And teaches at Seattle U.
Gotcha. And then for the fire tag, I have a new applicant for fire official / fire marshal, Greg Rogers, as an alternate for that slot. And those are the three tags that we have applicants for. And we can take them as a group as presented here, or we can take them tag by tag or applicant by applicant.
I would make a motion that we approve all three tags at the same time. I don't know that there's any significant discussion or controversy about any of them.
Nope, seems logical.
I'll second
That would
that.
be my.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded by Roger and then Tom. Any other discussion? Okay, sorry, I misread this. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Any opposed? Okay, those names are approved. And then, so Roger already made the announcement that single exit kicks off at 1 p.m. on Monday, correct?
Yes, and we're looking to do the delivery on all that here right after this meeting.
Okay.
Pushing that out for notice.
That's exciting. All right. Okay, BRFW committee. Roger, please.
Well, I'm going to ask you to help me, Todd. I appreciate you stepping in. I was not at the last meeting. And I think that the question that we wanted to raise at the executive committee meeting was about process. There are two, I'm going to call them two areas where we have multiple proposals and we are trying to marry them up, right? Match them up. And the easy one to talk about is three proposals for the EV charging. They basically are very similar proposals. They just have different numbers in the table. There is another one that has to do with mechanical. I think that there are two and they're kind of marrying them up. We really kind of sent that to the correlation group. There's some people correlating those, and then we will, or there are some people there are what?
Roger, yeah, on the damper one, sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
Just to recap for everyone. So we specifically tasked the proponent, Eric Vandermeer, who has a long history on the council, and then Micah. To my memory, that's what we tasked them to bring it back as a, it was pretty straightforward, I think.
So I think that our question is, process wise, I know and I will just speak on the free EV charging. When it came through the tag, all three were forwarded along with the understanding that the council and the standing committee would work out what we believe the right numbers are. And at the end of the day, there's going to be one change or maybe two changes. They're changing the numbers on the EV ready, the three EV charging, EV ready, and EV capable. So the committee will be working towards understanding and agreeing on what those numbers should be. The process question is, it may be simplest for us to deny all three of those and introduce an alternate proposal. We want to make sure that we do that legally correct. Or the other alternate is to pick one or two and modify them and deny two of them, except one with modifications. So those are kind of the two options. I would eventually like, prior to the BFRW committee meeting on April 11th, I would like to get Dirk to weigh in on the direction as well. We want to make sure we are following all of our the RCWs and our rules to make sure that we're doing the process right. So that was the question or concern. If we've got these three, we're not going to approve all three. Do we just deny all three and create another one, or do we stick with stick with the existing proposals, modify one or two, and come up with a recommendation to the full council on those? So, Todd, I'm going to turn that over. And actually, if you can clarify, I hope I presented that question at least coherently.
Yeah. Let's Jay, I'll get to you in just a second. That was the intent, that we purposely took these three petitions up to the full council. Council decided to then send it, and we flagged them in the BRFW. Council sent them back down to the committee for further work. And so I think what we're saying, Roger, is in our interpretation that the council's been petitioned to amend this section, and now we're actually in the process of amending. So go ahead, Jay.
And Roger, everything I'm hearing at this point is talking about the committee trying to get to a recommendation. What's pushing to getting to a recommendation versus having a couple of options out there that we put out for public comment and then make the decision when we adopt the code? We've done that in some circumstances previously on other issues.
I guess I would say, Jay, two things. Number one, I am not sure. It is possible that we could approve and or deny one or more of them as they are. However, I think the greater chances that the correct number that the BFRW and the full council arrive at may be tweaked from one or more. And the second reason is we are tasked, and I don't have the RCW up, but in the RCW, it specifically says that we are supposed to project EV car use into the future. And we are supposed to, thank you, Dustin, for bringing it up. I think that the
Anticipate.
proper
There it is.
anticipate. Yeah. Can you highlight anticipated right there?
Anticipated
3A.
levels.
So I take that as support the anticipated level of zero emission vehicles. So I take that as direction for the State Building Code Council to understand what the projections are and try to accommodate that. And I will, Todd has some numbers that he's pulled together that I've looked at that are very reasonable to use as a projection. And then, in my opinion, the discussion will be if we as a council accept that as a projection, which I think is reasonable and I support, then how do we want to try to accommodate that?
I appreciate you letting us all know kind of your thinking, your work so far. One thing I would just also put into your thinking is that I do think this is a topic we would get significant public comment on. And as you're talking about this in the committee and consulting Dierk on this, is I would hope that whatever's put out for public comments as the or whatever's the recommendation of the committee that becomes a proposal that gets put out for public comment gives us room as a council to move when we adopt. I know that we can only go so far in what gets put out for public comment for change for what we finally adopt, and just would like to be able to respond to public comment when we get it. Thanks.
And Jay, I'm going to get to Patrick here is one of the proponents, but I will say that we've spent substantial time in the IBC tag on all three petitions, and then had a dedicated hearing, kind of a glorified hearing at the last BRFW. And I would say we probably spent an hour or two specifically talking about this, and it was very educational, and I think we had great representation. So I do feel like we're ready to make a proposal for Sierra 102 with the goal that we still have time to.
That's great to hear. It will be helpful when the full council sees this, that some of the work that you've done to date, that you could walk through the full council with that. Thanks.
It's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, Patrick.
Yes, thank you. Not to beat a dead horse in the ground, but I still disagree with the summary of what the tag intended. But from when I initially worked on the proposal and revisions 6-ish months ago, can everybody hear me? My video's getting a little, turn off the video. Looks like it's lagging.
Oh, you're fine.
So from when I initially worked on the proposals back in December, there was a lot of issues that were brought to me with the section 429 at the large, but I thought we had kind of missed the window to try to fix those. But I thought the last hearing was really good, and it seemed like a lot of those issues were brought to the committee's attention. And so I've been working on, aside from just dealing with percentages and trying to do the anticipation of what's needed in the future, but looking at reworking the section at large and trying to fix those issues, especially in regards to the issues that the section has with decreasing the feasibility of multifamily housing construction. But I've had to put that on hold the past week as I try to finish 2066 related proposals for the energy code that are due on Monday. So I'm just wondering, I agree with Roger and Todd on trying to figure out the way to do that in the correct procedural way. I'm not sure if it goes beyond just amending my proposal that's out there. But I think there's an opportunity here to address those issues that people have brought up with the section, instead of just letting them go by for another code cycle. But I'd like to hear on how open the council members are to hearing, sincerely considering a rework of the section at large, or are you just looking to tweak the percentages?
Well, I think there's two things. That's why we're talking about today. Thank you, Patrick. We're prepared if the committee agrees here to post something. We'll work on it over the weekend and then post it hopefully Monday or so. I'll defer to Dustin on that, so that we have plenty of time to review it coming into the potential action next Friday. I do think we have a defensible argument now, but we're also we're raising this concern because we're being cautious about getting outside the bounds of what was petitioned to the council. Right. And we're balancing, trying to make a firm recommendation to the council, with, instead of filing all 3 to CR 102 so that we don't run out of time and have substantive, is that the correct word in our RCW? Changes once we, sorry?
It's close enough.
What is it supposed to be?
I think it's substantive.
Substantive, thank you. And what we're talking about there is once we file CR 102, if we make major changes, then technically we have to refile and wait 20 days and so forth. So we're just trying to do as much upfront work as we can and try to set a precedent as we get into other issues, especially with the energy code and where we're trying to blend together multiple petitions. Go ahead, Roger.
Patrick, I have a question, and like you, this was discussed, what, 4 or 5 months ago in detail. My memory was that we, as a tag, we had worked through all of the verbal questions, and it had come down to what the percentages were. If that memory is not correct, if you think that there were other things, I would like to first understand what they were. And then I want to be careful, and I think that this is going to be where we need to be careful about what line we cross. If the tag looked at all of those technical questions and said, no, let's not make those changes, then I would say, let's not go back and revisit those. However, if that really was not discussed in technically, so I want to understand a little bit more what you're talking about. Anything with any of the petitions or the challenges with that section other than the percentages. So, and I think I would need to understand that before, and go back to, I would prefer not to have to listen to all the hearings of the tag meetings, but trying to understand what was agreed to on the tag around that language. So.
You don't have a spare 30 hours to spend watching old YouTube videos?
No.
That's allowed.
What I was referring to is my understanding was that the tag voted to send all of those as options on the CR 102, but that's kind of water under the bridge at this point. It's gone back to the council sent it to committee. The other technical issues that came to my attention were not things that were brought up at the tag level. They were things that I had in outside conversations with folks and experts. And then in preparation for that hearing, I talked with some of our members who build large multi-family developments, and I heard even more concerns from them. And then those concerns got brought up at the committee hearing. And then there was also some concerns potentially on the electrical side about the code being a little confusing in how it relates to electrical things. So I think there's a lot of issues that I'm looking to try to improve in the current code language, other than just trying to bring the percentages more in what I think is a reasonable anticipation. So it's kind of the overall percentages that they're requiring, but then there's these other issues that I think have come up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrick. I mean, we obviously don't want to deliberate here about the merits of the proposal, but I think what we do want is agreement on the format. So we're ready to, propose. And I guess the question to the committee is, and Dustin and staff, please, can we simply amend the WAC language? I don't feel like as council we have to necessarily fill out the petition, but we will make the argument and including the cost benefit, the start of the cost benefit argument for the committee, for the work group. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can create stuff. So is the ask that we're kind of combining all those proposals into one document to bring to the committee so that we can deliberate? Yeah,
I'd like to, I'll work on over the weekend and then, if you don't mind reviewing it and posting it on Monday or Tuesday, but I guess the question is can I simply work on the WAC language rather than, submit it as a petition, right? We're not petitioning the council at this point. We're just simply proposing language, correct?
Yes, but in the interest of like, so in any of the stuff that I've prepared as, you know, on behalf of the council or as staff, specifically recalling back to the bottle filling stations proposal,
Mhm.
I put that all into the code change proposal form just so that it looks the same for everybody when if they go back and look at that document. So if you want to work with just the WAC language, I would be happy to put that stuff into the form for posting so that it just for uniformity's sake of how
Okay.
everything is presented.
Rod, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, it wasn't.
I do. I still wanted to, and I don't want to beat this up either, but I think, Patrick, I would trying to think about what, again, the intent of the BFRW is to get the best proposal forward. But we want to be cautious about making too many changes, right? However, I think that we have, if there are, you made a comment at the end that there is confusion about the electrical. I would just step back, not knowing any of the details of what you're saying. I believe it would be in our purview of the BFRW committee if we became aware after the tag of conflicting comments or directions on the code, that we would try to address that in the current BFRW before we send it on to Tier 1 too. So I'm a little bit cautious. You know, your comment about disagreements on what the language is. So there's a line there that I am careful that I don't want to cross. But if it is just clarifying, if there's conflict in the code that we become aware of afterwards, after the tag input, I think that it is in our purview to pick that up. So Todd, I'm going to suggest that I don't know how best to do that, Patrick, other than to bring that to the meeting. And ultimately, my challenge is we do need to, schedule-wise, we do need to make sure that we are moving forward with it. My hope is that we would take action at the meeting on the 11th all right, this is what the CR 102 is going to be for the EV charging. So I want to be cautious about getting too deep into it, but if there's clarification on code language that we can make changes to be more clear, I think that we would still consider those. That's my opinion. So.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'll get to it. I'll get the language that I have in mind, and I've shared around a little bit, and then we'll make sure we get it posted and shared out. So Patrick, you can also look at that and edit that if you want to bring language to the meeting. Or share beforehand would be better. Yeah. Okay. Well, everyone will go ahead.
I have another topic for the BFRW committee.
Yeah.
So our hope and intent was to have a robust discussion on the 11th about the embodied carbon as well. And you know, right now there is revision, maybe revision 4, I don't remember the number of the proposal. And I'm for, Patrick has brought this up in the past. We don't want to post a updated proposal 2 days before, so people can't understand where we are currently at. I have been, Ariel, who is the proponent, did suggest that there was continued conversations after the tag approved it. And so they have some proposed modifications, minor modifications, part of this additional work that we are going forward on. I guess I'm asking in general, the best way for us to do that, at a starting point of the conversation, revision 4 of whatever is posted, or would it make sense for us to allow the proponents, since they have done some additional work with stakeholders, to post a revision 5 at this stage, we are 1 week before our meeting, post that and let that be the baseline that we're starting with. So I am opening that question up to any of the council members or the executive committee, and Patrick, to be honest with you as well. I know, you know, you've had challenges, particularly with this proposal. It's been ongoing, you know, and at some point you need to have, all right, this is the proposal that we are all reviewing and commenting on going forward. So.
And Roger, this is where, similar to the question I was raising, I start to get a little uncomfortable when we put it in the petition form, because now essentially we're, you know, in my opinion, it's in the committee's hands now, and we're no longer petitioning the council for, you know, to take action, and we're obviously outside the window. So that's where it starts to, even just by appearance, starts to look a little funny to me that we're, you know, putting it in that form. Now, that said, we would love if the proponent and any stakeholder would engage us on the language and share that, so that the committee can start to, you know, make modifications to propose and get it out there, right? Especially during the hearing. So that's why I was proposing maybe a different format, but
Okay,
curious what people think. Yeah.
Yeah, any other comments? Because
Yeah.
I almost think, you know, 3 weeks ago, I was thinking it may make sense for us to go ahead and post another revision and allow the proponent to reflect the proposal to reflect the work that they have continued to do.
Do we have their language?
I don't. No.
Okay.
And I at this stage of the game, a week ahead of time, I almost think it's too late. So, Todd, I agree with you, and let's you know, hopefully we get comments from multiple people, and you know, then it will be the committee's responsibility to integrate all of those comments and come up with a solution that we recommend to the.
Yeah, because you know, if it goes the way, I thought the format worked well with EV chargers, that we had a very robust discussion and we were pulling things up on the screen and really just discussing it. It wasn't a hearing where we had, you know, 2-3 minute windows. We were really getting into the content. So go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, yeah, no matter what form it takes, getting it out earlier than later is beneficial, you know, because it'll take some time to digest and think about a little bit before we have a discussion on it. So
Yeah, and Tom, if I can respond to that, I mean, I'm also thinking of our schedule. We have this April 11th meeting. I had not assumed that we would come to a resolution on April 11th. That's really going to be, like Todd called it, a hearing. Let's really dig into this and have everybody bring all of the questions and concerns out on the table. And then the next meeting, which is May something, I don't know the date, is when we would probably take action. And I think that still fits within our timeline to then allow the staff to get that published in the Sierra 102 format. Well, it would be the May meeting then that the full council would debate it. And then, so that is pushing it out beyond that timeline. We start getting crunched a little bit for the Sierra 102. So,
you know,
that's my hope on how we get to a conclusion. But
yeah, like we said in the meeting, you know, we're not trying to drag anything on, and we're obviously very busy this summer with group 2, but we technically do have time. So we're trying to get to the filing, and then we still have time after that as a council. So, okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, just a response since Roger asked for my opinion specifically. I think obviously posting things earlier is always better. And I know particularly with the embodied carbon, that's a pretty lengthy proposal, and there's a lot of complexity in there. So it's, you know, there's some proposals that the code language is less than a page and it can be fairly easy to review, but that one probably takes a lot more time. We're not direct stakeholders in that. I think part of the concern that I would share generally as a stakeholder is it can be very hard to follow what the SBCC is doing. And I feel like the goal of these public hearings is to have an opportunity where stakeholders know what's coming, they know in advance, and they can come, bring their concerns, have them addressed. But and I know that you discuss that in these meetings, but if people aren't listening to these meetings, they don't really know that that's coming. And I'm sure you'll send out a notice, but that notice will probably just say BFRW committee. And unless people click in on the agenda and have been paying attention to the discussion in the executive committees, they might not be aware that that's what's happening next Friday. And so I know the key stakeholders on that. I'm not sure if they've been made aware of this and if it's going to happen. And so it feels like it'll just be going back to what's happening at the tag, where they weren't always aware of when things were going to happen, what was going to be discussed, and able to provide have ample time to review things and provide good feedback in a timely manner. The other issue that I brought up with the embodied carbon in particular, because I think it's going to have the potential for a very large cost impact, particularly on small businesses that have to comply with it, is I don't think that the economic portion of the proposal document was ever filled out properly. So I don't think it was ever a complete proposal. And that was the whole issue we went with, and they were never reviewed for that. So really, they shouldn't have been taking any action by the council to forward them on until they were complete. But the alternative I was suggesting is, if there was issues that got brought up, let people address that through revision. And as long as it was adequately addressed in revision, I think that's a comparable solution to that. But I don't think the economic section was ever updated with its different revisions. And so I thought the discussion was to have the economic, or the work group on economic impact of the council at some point get involved in trying to deal with the deficiencies when it comes to that proposal. I think there will also be opportunities if you can complete that, and if you do move forward with it, I think there will be opportunities to work with other government agencies on the small business economic impact statement to get some good data and qualitative information on what the impact will have. But I'd like to see, because I know the council, I think, voted on it, discussed getting the work group on economic impact involved at some point. And I know that it feels a little bit like we're at the airport with 100 things to fit in a very small suitcase and not a lot of time to pack it all in. And I'm feeling that as a stakeholder, as the residential codes are getting compacted quite tightly, and we have multiple active windows. So there's a lot going on, and it can be very hard to keep track of.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrick. And my response is that's exactly what we're doing here. And that's why these were flagged. One, either they have more technical work and we wanted more public input and engagement on it. And that's why we had the hearing. But also in that same action in February, that is where we kicked off the work on the economic impact and on the code correlation. So that is the point of the hearings, is in fact the EV chargers. And as you remember, we were trying to really pull out how to form the argument for the economic impact on the EV chargers. And that was a lot of the discussion, and the same on this one. This is the time that we're taking to make sure that we are going through that on the embodied carbon. So
if I can just offer an idea, perhaps when you send out the public meeting notice through your Gov delivery system, instead of you can do the typical BFRW committee notice, but then if you send out or change how that notice looks, or send out a separate notice like you've done with other hearings to specifically highlight public hearing on embodied carbon, I think that would kind of make it easier for stakeholders that are on the delivery list to know that that's coming up.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And we have been reaching out personally for most of the relevant stakeholders on this one. But thank you for that. Okay, go ahead, Roger.
That actually was, I raised my hand for a couple of things. Patrick and I have a different understanding of the completeness of the original proposal. However, I think we would both agree that it needs to be looked at closer on the work group on economic impact. That needs to be on that group's list of things to look at closely. And particularly if the proposal is continuing to change, I think we need to get to, okay, here's a proposal before that work group really can look closely at that. And then I was going to say the same thing, Dustin, as we make that announcement, the email announcement, I completely agree. My intent, the BFRW meeting, I wasn't at the last one, the one before that. I thought that I had specifically said the April 11th meeting is when we will be hearing conversations. That meeting will be devoted primarily to the embodied carbon. So it has been announced, but I completely agree with the idea of in the email announcement that goes out, if we can flag it somehow and make it more clear so that all of the stakeholders, you know, see that and hear that. I would appreciate that.
So just a couple thoughts on the gov delivery topic there. You know, just thinking on the fly, the gov delivery, typically we just link the agenda in there. My first thought was to potentially, you know, put the verbiage of the agenda items into the body of the gov delivery, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to bring the attention that we're asking for to these hot topic items. So I'm thinking that potentially a separate gov delivery to really call the attention to the hearing component there might be appropriate. Or we could still link the agenda and then kind of flag hot topics in the body. I want to get it out there, but I want to make sure that we're not overloading people's inboxes with a bunch of gov deliveries on this as well. But
Dustin, if we can work on that, I'd kind of like to take a look at it. I do think what it would look like. I agree with Patrick. When I look at an email, if I see, all right, it's a DFRW meeting and there is a big, you know, an asterisk or something saying this is the primary topic of the meeting is, or something like that. So somehow I would like, whether it's two or somehow we modify the typical one. I agree we should do that. So
we have complete liberty to put them in there what we want. We do have some templates out there, so that's why they come out kind of standardized for each of our options. We've been talking about some a little bit of change in the way we've been doing the gov delivery to notice some other things that council is doing. So Roger, as we get ready for this one, I want to coordinate with you on the sending of the gov delivery, and I can include you in a test send so that you know, if we want to call attention in a different way, we can go ahead and do that. We'll just collect them back.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we comfortable with the BRFW discussion? All right. Thank you for that. We'll move on in the agenda then to WUI code.
So the reason I bring this one up is, or I guess not I bring it up, but the reason it's on our agenda today is that right now we don't have the maps from DNR. They are working hard on those. They'll come out a little bit sooner than maybe initially anticipated, which is great, but it'll be a little bit late for our 2024 code cycle. You know, there's the issues of defensible space and building hardening that go along. Those seem to be the hot topic issues that we had a lot of input on in the 2021 code as it was became effective. That's outside of the mapping and kind of confusion in the code sections that tell you how to comply with the building hardening sections. So there was a bill in this legislative session that would have kind of empowered the SBCC to create an optional code while those maps are still in development. That bill has died, and we have a contracted timeline, or I guess a shortened timeline for getting everything across the finish line for December 1 this year. And the main topic is, should the SBCC be engaging in work with the WUI code? I think that there is a tough discussion on some of the building hardening and defensible space topics that would benefit from more time in the process. But we right now, the way it looks is that WUI code will come back to SBCC's table for official work in the 2027 cycle. And the question for the group and the whole council is, should we be dedicating any resources to this at this time with the challenges we're facing with the timing and getting everything done? option. So we continue to fill out the ranks of that tag, which is great. But we are also struggling with the timeline and getting this rolling down the road.
Okay, so what?
So
Yeah,
I
I
guess
think,
my other question for this group to then maybe bring to the council this April is what are we doing with the WUI code? Are we gonna convene and talk about the topics without necessarily a goal in sight, or are we going to delay that until we have maps in hand or until we can start the 2027 cycle?
Tom and then Katie. Yeah.
It seems to me, since there was so much discussion last time, you know, about all of these things, that there might be some value to having a few things already talked out, you know, and then modify them as needed when the maps do become available. You know, it would save perhaps a lot of time, you know, if the maps come out at who knows when. If we've already got a bunch of the work done, then maybe we could, you know, fit it into a code cycle better.
Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the balance of knowing all the other work that is happening for folks. It's a tough question. I mean, I was gonna ask, like, does us working on it mean that we get a better WUI code? Or do we like, and I think that we could, but I don't get the feeling that our staff has a lot of capacity for work that doesn't necessarily have a deadline. So I'm conflicted about it.
Go ahead, Jay.
I don't have the monster Gantt chart that Dustin put together handy, but I do think we need to, you know, looking at that, need to say, how can we ease off on 2025 work? Because it is scary. I do like the idea of trying to get a jump start, and I'm wondering if there is a window that there might be some capacity to kick this off maybe in the fourth quarter of this year, but not now, not during the summer where we've got multiple other codes and topics like single staircase all converging all at once.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Patrick.
I do have the chart that Dustin made, although it's pretty hard to read when you print it out. It's pretty small. And I see a lot of work on the residential side of the codes in the next 6 months. And we are stakeholders on the DNR process. I talked with Angela Lane, I think is the project manager for that, and we're going to be in on those meetings. And I was told that the entire project is not slated to be completed until June 2026. So, and I know some folks have brought up, when it comes to code development, they feel like meeting earlier before things are fully finished can save time. But in my experience, it doesn't. You just end up discussing the same thing multiple times. I think it's generally better to wait to talk about something until you're ready and able to actually have action on it. And with how much work we have to do on the residential side this year, and since the maps won't even be completed, I don't think it will be very productive to spend time trying to have any kinds of discussions without working maps. And I think it'll be much easier to incorporate that in the 2027 code, because the maps should be done by then, and we'll have a clear idea of what we're talking about, and hopefully we'll have a better managed schedule that doesn't get bunched up, and have a little more breathability to deal with that. Thank you.
I guess my question, everyone, I struggle with doing nothing. It is one of life safety codes, and we have a statutory requirement to, you know, consider these codes on a 3-year cycle. I understand the limitations and why we are waiting, but I don't I don't see it as linear as maybe others do, that we have to wait for risk maps to be done. We can do work, we can consider model code. And I think there is a, a sense of urgency in the sense that any work we do this year could inform if a WUI bill came back next session. So if we don't do that work, then we're not contributing anything to that discussion next January, which we know that work happens this fall and leading into session. So go ahead, Tom.
And being as, counties and cities can independently adopt their own codes right now, having that input into something they may do individually, I think would be beneficial, and maybe a preview into what's coming if there were to be a little bit of work done ahead of time. So
Okay. Go ahead, Roger.
I agree with everybody. There's a lot of work. I don't know how we're going to get through it all necessarily, and I don't want to add, but knowing the urgency of wildfires. I mean, we've had the Cheney fire, and there are so many more fires. I believe it is a serious life safety issue. So I don't like doing nothing. I think we need to find, and I understand the maps are suspect. But I think we need to do something, and I apologize. I haven't been paying that close attention to the the language of the law that passed that took away the WUI code that we passed. So I don't have clear direction of what I would recommend, other than I don't like doing nothing. And feel like I think we need to come out with this code that's something that cities and counties can look at least as a baseline, as a minimum. That's what I think. So.
Okay. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, to that, I do think that putting something out that would, I mean, it would be a way of getting feedback. The WUI code was what the feedback that we got last time was that it was confusing and it didn't work. And for counties that do have maps, I was talking to a Spokane County commissioner, and she was like, it would be great to know what you guys are doing or thinking, and we can decide. So I'm inclined to, I mean, and Dustin, we were talking a while ago about, if it's a few meetings it would end up kind of being proposed language that what we get feedback on for next time that might actually help us to know what is going to be good for the 27 code. I don't know if you still feel like that.
Well, so I'm currently wearing my managing director hat, and I really want to let the council decide where we go with the WUI code. But when I take that hat off and look back on my experience, I used to be employed as a state park ranger in Texas. I was trained as a wildland firefighter, and some of the provisions in the code that people don't like, I think are very good provisions of the code. Having lost a house in a wildfire, I think that having a WUI code in place for everybody to use is a good thing. And in having something that, remembering back to the criticisms brought, the WUI code for 2021 was developed prior to my tenure here at the SBCC. And so I think that in hearing the criticisms with it was too fast, confusing, and then the result was also confusing. I just think a lot of discussion is needed to move it forward. Do we need a full process engaged right now? I don't think that that's maybe the process we need. I think having a meeting to discuss what we have going on would be good. So at the moment, we have an emergency rule in place that strikes all of the WAC 5155 for the WUI code. Very soon, I'll have the permanent rulemaking complete on that. That will make it visible on the register webpage. And so we're essentially starting with the base model code. There's not going to be any existing amendments to this code. And so we're starting fresh. And so I think that bringing people to the table to talk about what they like and don't like about the model code will inform how we, look forward. We're not going to necessarily, I think, seek proposals on it, but if we can identify the hardships that people are having, we can then, prime that pump to, get the proposals that target those sections. The experience I had when I came to SBCC staff was that we had the WUI code going into effect in a couple months, and we didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden we had an effective code, and everybody came out of the wings to talk about the problems they were having enforcing. And so I sympathize with the confusion, because answering those questions was definitely difficult, and to have everybody use the same thought process as I was using to try to explain those didn't always work out, and there's conflicting views. So I think having an early conversation will be beneficial, but how far we're what the goal of those conversations is probably the question to ask right now. Are we really just trying to identify the sticking points in the provisions of the code? Are we just trying to inform on the sections of the code that don't fit with Washington statute? So, for example, road access and water supply requirements are controlled by their statute in Washington. Or are we really trying to kind of siphon down into what we are trying to do as an adoption process for the WUI code, and what are the provisions that people want to see and don't want to see in there? And so, next session, the dead bills that are dead right now, they'll come back. That's part of the process. And so we will have a WUI code a bill to look at next session. And, so I think procrastinating on it doesn't do us any favors. But we're also in a situation where the foundation of the mapping and where the risk areas are going to lie is kind of up in the air. And, I think as we get further down the road, having Miss Lane from DNR on that tag will help inform where the maps are going. And, I think we can have preliminary discussions and get going. And I don't think we're going to need like a once a week meeting like the other tags for group 2, but we could entertain maybe a once a month, once a quarter, or something like that to continue the discussion and, identify the points so people can hear what other people are saying and come back with their, input and feedback on those perspectives. And so, my personal opinion is that the conversation should start now, but what the goal is where I am landing short at the moment.
Thank you, Dustin. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody, this is my memory, and I came on the council a couple of months before we approved the WUI code. I don't remember exactly. My understanding and opinion is I had understood that there was a 2-year process that a separate group of council members and stakeholders went through to create the last WUI code that we passed. After we passed it, there were a bunch of people that didn't like the provisions and said we did it too fast without public comment, but there were 2 years of public meetings. And does this go to Patrick's question about, were they aware that we were considering it? I don't know that before my time. But there was a lot of public comment and work done, and we arrived at that WUI code. And I hesitate to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that there's a whole lot of work that we did. And yes, there were people that were discouraged or didn't like some of the provisions. And I forget, I think Dustin said, or Todd or somebody said, let's look at those provisions of the last WUI code that people had the heartache about and revise that. And the maps are one of them. So, the defensible space is one of them. I know my reading of the WUI code that we passed is different than some of the people that testified that said, oh, we're going to have to cut down thousands and thousands of trees. I didn't read it that way. So, you know, my point being, I want us to continue to move forward with something. And I think we have to provide something to the people of the state of Washington in this next code cycle. I don't feel like we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. We should go back and look at that code that we did a whole lot of work on and try to come up with something that is a minimum code. So.
And a lot of the building hardening section and the defensible space section, the defensible space section is a couple lines of code in essence. The building hardening section references over to the defensible space to be a component of how you apply the building hardening provisions. And so in those specific sections, there was not any state amendment. We did have a state amendment earlier on that brought in the legislative, technical language into the code into a different spot. And there's a main point of confusion is having essentially the same language in two different portions of the code and saying, if you comply with the legislative language, you're in compliance with the WUI code, but we're also giving you this other loophole path. It was an exception that then pointed to the model building hardening section, which then points to defensible space as a component of how you apply that section. And so, I do agree that we should look at the existing amendments. I didn't mean to say that we wouldn't bring those to it, but we are as far as the WAC language status, that those amendments are, not in existence anymore. But I do think that, we should look at the past on them to see if they can inform a path forward as well. And as I understand that process for the 2021, I feel like I heard, and it may be rumor, but once the maps dropped, that was after the process had started, and that lent to some quick pivots towards the end of that process. And I think that that's where most people found it confusing and short and not enough time to digest that.
Go ahead, Jay.
I would concur with what Dustin just said. When the WUI code was adopted first before we saw the maps, and there were never any anticipation that the maps would pull in the urban areas that it pulled in, where you're talking about places in Bellingham, you're talking about big shopping centers in Olympia and Tumwater. There were parts of my city, Kirkland, that's a Seattle suburb on the shore of Lake Washington, that got pulled into the WUI code given what was in the maps. And so I do think that what we took from that was two things. One is that that they need to be developed in together in context, so that you know that the code that you're developing applies in these particular areas. And if there's some head start work to say for a particular category of issue that could happen, I'm fine with going that forward, but it's really the intersection going forward. And then the second piece going on that didn't exist last time that'll help inform this time is just the California fires, where you saw the impacts in the urban areas, and they need us to rethink things. So I want to learn from what happened in the past, but I also think last time around, but I also think this is a new discussion. So I was able to pull up the big chart, and given what we're hearing today and Dustin's thoughts on this, if there's a way that we could come back with a proposal saying, when would this start to happen, in the second half of the year or the fourth quarter, maybe a couple of monthly meetings to get started, and talk through the issues of even just getting people up to speed on the existing code versus the international model code. Maybe there's some benefit to that, but I would want to look at it in relation on where it fits into the big code adoption schedule chart and making sure that we still can get done all the work we've got to do on energy code, single exit staircase, residential code, etc.
Okay. Katie?
Yeah, I like that, Jay. And I also appreciate Dustin sort of like crystallizing it, going like maybe the question to bring to the code is, or to the council is to say, you know, we can fit discussion and preliminary, sort of a preliminary draft, I suppose, but what is the ultimate goal of meeting so that we can have that really clear for the public and for ourselves of what we're going to try to accomplish. And so it sounds like what that would be is a review of what we did last time, and then excuse me, and then something else. No, it feels like what we're trying to do is understand where the issues are, and yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of obviously up in the air about what that goal would be. So
Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
One thought that might be is just saying, can you get to what we've talked about as an integrated draft of saying, here's the base that you want to hear code proposals on, given what was passed before and what exists within model code. Maybe that's a starting point for discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay. Dave?
Well, I've been involved with the WUI code. When I was chair of the tag, fire tag. That was the first time that it was actually an appendix of the fire code. I will say that when there's an appendix of the fire code, it's a lot easier than when the council did approach it with the WUI tag. I participated on the WUI tag. I was the lone vote against the proposals that were put together when it was submitted through. Because of a couple of reasons. And I just want to clarify a couple of things to the council, just so they keep this in mind with all the things that are going on with this code. We do have some members that are on the WUI tag that are also on the steering committee for the map, including myself, that are going to establish the requirements for the hazard and risk maps. Hopefully it's clear that that is not a WUI map. That is the hazard and risk. The WUI maps, or the WUI designations, are supposed to be coming from the local jurisdictions. The map is not going to show what the WUI is going to be. It has to come from the locals. So it's, in a general sense, not much different than the map that was done previously. So the idea that we're pushing hard and working with Angie, she's been very good with this. We have some good facilitators for the committee. We're starting to establish some boundaries of what we're going to be doing with this. But that is the key push from that committee, is it has to be available to the local jurisdictions to be able to modify. It's not going to be a static map. This is going to be it's going to change on a regular basis, maybe even day to day with things. But I have to concur with a number of the council members that are basically saying we do have to meet to discuss some of the code changes that were proposed. I think some were basing themselves off of that other map and creating some issues that they really didn't need to establish. But we just have to look back at the bill itself, the specifics that are required for it, what's going to be required from the council to be able to respond to that. And I think that it'll provide us a good path of where we need to move forward to. But I think that we can be taking proposals and start looking at other changes that are going to it. All we're going to be changing is the map. The code is not going to change. So we can do some review and discussion about the code itself. Thank you.
That's helpful, Dave. Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I agree. That's real helpful and good to know. I mean, it's similar to, the process that Whitman County went through developing its our county CWPP, countywide fire protection plan. And it is an evolving map, and I just think that it's real important to, kind of take a look at kind of what blew it up last time, and kind of focus on those issues to see if we can, mitigate it. And, if it is going to be a map that, the individual counties or cities are going to look at to, tweak it to their situation. I mean, Whitman County doesn't have any forests, but we got a lot of dry wheat in the winter, or I mean, in the summer. So, we will look at those areas a little bit differently than some other areas will. So I don't know. I'm just going back to, I think we should kind of prioritize what we look at first and see what made the other one fail so miserably, both, publicly and, with the legislature, who ended up making us pull it back, and focus on changing that first and then moving forward with the rest, because the rest probably was pretty solid.
Yeah, I'll weigh in and give my opinion here. I think we need to be proactive. I take issue in a lot of the testimony in Olympia. There's a lot of misinformation and some disinformation, challenging the council, that there's a lack of trust, that we lost trust in that previous process. And that's not how I would characterize. And I think the best thing we can do is move forward and actually, propose, the direction we're going. As a practitioner, product developer and working on actual projects in high risk areas, we don't get to throw our ethics out the window just because, something is null and void. It's kind of analogous to Roger doesn't, if the building code in the structural code went null and void, he can't not make a building stand up. So, we even if the code isn't in place, there's market drivers, there's insurance, there's other things that we design too, and we as practitioners are very aware of these. And I'm using the California code in some cases that was just released in Washington, Idaho project. So I think we need to move forward, and I think this is a good discussion. And I'm in addition to the suggestions of reviewing the 2024 model code, including the sections that we currently aren't allowed. I think we need to be comprehensive and anticipate where this might go next session. I mean, there were many 2027 amendments at the ICC level that I could see Washingtonians wanting to talk about and perhaps bringing in as potential amendments. So I think that's an argument for hopefully starting. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I feel strongly we need to do something in 2024, minimum, and how we get there, I don't know. Yes, 2027 is going to be, we'll have the maps, we'll have updated ICC, so there's going to be work on the review then. And finally, I need to remind everybody, I need to drop off here, so I will be not offering my opinion on any of the other agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Okay, and we probably can wrap this up. Go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say, so in order to wrap this up, would it be, Dustin, would you and I get together and talk about timing for you? And then I like the idea of reviewing the previous issues, like Tom said, what blew it up last time. And then that idea of getting an integrated draft where we can review code proposals from, or kind of say, these are the areas that we anticipate future, like what Jay suggested earlier. And then understanding that all these that we can write a code where there's suggestions, and if this is going to be changing, which thank you, Dave, for explaining all that, then we know that there's language out there for the public, at least preliminarily. Well, if that's a word.
So yes, as far as me and you discussing a timeline that might work for what we have going on to potentially bring to the council meeting, this month, great. I think that reviewing the previous amendments would be part of our task. I think also looking forward to the 2027 WUI code would maybe inform some of this discussion. In my recollection of the 2024, there's very little movement in that one as compared to the 2021 version. And then just a question on the integrated draft: are we looking for the previous state amendments drafted against the WUI code to begin talking about? Because we do have that online with the Washington Custom WUI code on ICCC. Sorry, too many C's. And so, but if we wanted to integrate some of the 2027 language into a draft as well, we could potentially bring that. But I also want to steer away potentially from just using an integrated draft. I think bringing the reports like we have listed out in our statute might inform a little bit. Well, we could probably do both, honestly. But if we're gonna do the integrated draft, I would also want to make sure we get the existing amendments and significant changes reports drafted as a way to also organize and form that. But we can talk about that as far as a process of like what all the material should be to bring to the table as kind of our starting point, and then figure out what would be best as far as a presentation method.
That seems right to me. Dave, does that, you had some suggestions earlier, it sounded like, does that sit well?
Yeah, that aligns pretty much what I think we want to be able to do. I think it's consensus. We need to go through and figure out what occurred and then see how to adjust from that. And I would definitely recommend that we take a look at the 2027.
Great. All right, Dustin,
We already did that with the fire code. We're going to pull stuff in early too, so we can do that.
And so does that mean that we'll have that ready for the 18th?
I won't have those documents that we're talking about creating ready for the 18th, but I think what we can have ready for the 18th is a suggestion on how often we should have the WUI code tag meetings and a target for what the work is at the moment.
Great.
Not necessarily trying to put forth a 2024 code, but to identify the big issues and make sure that we're not going to necessarily steer in the wrong direction and have to take steps backwards once those maps come out. And I think maybe less frequent meetings in 2025, and then maybe a couple more frequent meetings in the beginning of 2026 as the maps near their completion of their process would maybe be a little more favorable in my outlook at the moment.
Okay, good discussion. I'm glad we did that. Okay, let's move on and then finish the meeting with setting our agenda for April 18th.
So,
Dustin, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we typically are going to start out with the same 4 beginning council agenda items, which is the welcome and introductions, the agenda for approval, previous minutes, and then items not on the agenda. Notes from this particular meeting for things to bring to that one. We're going to have a couple more tag appointments to bring to that meeting. We'll have some committee reports. I will have a WUI code discussion. And then, as part of the committee reports, there'll probably be some more sub items within there to bring. But I'm not sure I'm catching everything that I have proposed on the schedule at the moment.
Dustin, I think the important one, if maybe you mentioned it, is opening the window for
Yes.
IRC. Did you say it already?
I did not, but I was
Okay.
I was getting to it. I don't have my monster sheet in front of me at the moment, but I know there's a window that we're trying to open, and so open window.
Is it just the IRC or what am I missing?
It would be like as proposed on that chart, it would be inclusive of the IRC and the WUI code. But since our discussion, maybe we put the WUI code in front of the window opening and then we can inform on if we're gonna look for some sort of proposal. We're not ready with any sort of reports or anything to inform on what proposals should be. So I think it would be just for the IRC at this point.
And our draft, our IRC is ready. I'm not following where we are.
It's not. So thank you for bringing that one up. I am still struggling real hard to get that one ready to go for the tag to review. If I had it magically done today and over the weekend, we wouldn't be able to get it done in time for the April meeting. So I think we're going to need to shift actually a proposal window for the IRC out a little bit more.
Okay. So we won't take action on the IRC on the 18th.
So let me pull open that chart.
Okay.
So as proposed earlier, it was the remaining group 2 amendment. So the UPC is well on track. So it'll be just UPC at this point.
And have we accepted that integrated draft to publish yet? I don't remember.
That is going to be coming to this council. So we have that coming to the BFRW next week. It's anticipated. They met yesterday and got most of the way through the significant changes report on the UPC, which has more content than the existing amendments report. And so I'm very hopeful that we can get those reports wrapped up by the tag come next Tuesday. They have a meeting. If they don't wrap it there is planned to have a meeting on Thursday, but that kind of puts us out of sync with noticing for the meeting and getting stuff published for the BFRW committee. So I'm not sure where we're at with that one will be informed by where we get to on Tuesday's meeting.
And then I can't remember, we could accept the reports and open the window in one meeting.
Yes.
Okay. But we will not do it for the WUI or the IRC at this meeting. Okay. Patrick, do you have a comment?
That was just the question I was going to ask. My alarm bells were going off. I thought that you were asking for proposals for the IRC, even though we haven't started work on that yet.
Yeah. I was daylighting that just like we did the WUI code to make sure we're all in the same understanding that will not be on the agenda for the 18th. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, this Dustin, I saw you grabbing this chart off the website real fast. Where did you get that?
So if you get to our SBCC homepage, we go to the 2024 code adoption page, and we have the 2024 code review and adoption schedule in here. There's a couple other places that it lives on our website, which is just at the previous meetings where we've discussed it. But this is the main link here. And just, I guess, also to highlight some other changes to our website recently, our meeting schedules and agendas page has seen some updates. Previously, the committees weren't necessarily broken out like they are here. And if you wanted to look at older committee meetings, you had to siphon or filter through all of the committee meetings to find the ones you want. So the way it's working right now, we're on the all meetings schedules and agendas page. So all activity is displayed here. And then we have past meetings at the bottom. And then there's a ton of pages associated with this one. If you click into the State Building Code Council, we have just council meetings that populate here. And same for the rest of the committee meetings. And then as far as technical advisory groups, we have all of the technical advisory groups listed in this particular spot. I would like to break them out into individual groups, but the coding that needs to happen for this is something that's locked for SBCC staff. So coordinating with our web host to get that sort of stuff put together so we can further, filter this stuff out so that we can get it going. And, our technical advisory group pages, we're still working to get all those updated. We're keeping the rosters and everything up to date, but there's still more plans coming down the road for what's presented there. So for most people, I would point as far as our current stuff going on, point to the 2024 code adoption cycle and the meeting schedules and agendas page. And as far as our rulemaking page, this one has some work left to bring it up to date with everything that's active right now. But this is getting working. And this is a new section here, the proposal submittal periods. This was suggested by Patrick. And so this is the place where this is going to live. And as we get, more proposal periods coming, so this needs an update here for the upcoming one. And I guess I
Good work.
pasted something.
Nice.
Wrong.
Nice additions, team.
Yes. But we're working on getting this stuff, and we hear the comments that are coming out from the public, and we're trying to pivot and make some efficiency changes there. It's just that right now the site needs quite a bit of work, and we're strategizing how to do that along with everything else we've got on the stove.
Nice. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Okay, back to the schedule then. Will we need to put an agenda item for the council to take action on if we converge on new schedules for the IRC, UPC, and WUI? Or is that just simply we can update that document, we don't need to take action?
We haven't taken I'd need to go back and double check, but I don't think there's been any official council action on schedule updates. But we can take official action to, officially adopt it. But as we brought them forward and talked about where we are in this year so far, we've made the changes to the posting online.
Okay, so maybe even without action, maybe we should just put an agenda item and raise that so everyone's up to date on those schedules and anticipated windows. Okay, anything else?
I don't think so at the moment. There could be some stuff that arises, but I think we've got the main bullet points
Okay.
here. And so I've got, our normal agenda stuff, tag appointments, committee reports, WUI code discussion and maybe direction, open the window for the UPC, and a 2024 schedule update.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just got one more thing for Dustin. Is it possible to put a download link on that schedule in an Excel file so that we can scroll it and lock columns so we can kind of tell where we're at when we're looking at it?
I could we can post, editable documents online. The practice though is to pretty much post PDFs so that the documents don't get altered and then show up somewhere else as
Gotcha.
This is what's going on. But I can make stuff available. If you'd like an Excel spreadsheet of it, I can make it available.
I mean, if you can email it to me, that'd be cool. That way I can color it and look around it easier than on the PDF. It's kind of tough. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, good idea. Okay. Other business, anything else? All right, hearing none. Thank you for the time today. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Happy Friday, everybody.